On one of his recent visits to Vancouver, Balan of the University of Alberta told me about a groundbreaking project he's been involved and instrumental in developing. It's an eco-museum in Alberta called Kalyna Country. Kalyna Country has become a fabulous runaway success, winning awards and attracting a lot of attention around the world. Yaris kindly agreed to come on the air on Nash Holis with a detailed overview of this fascinating and very exciting development next door in Alberta. Yaris Balan has been involved since the inception of Kalyna Country in Alberta in 1991, and he's joining me now to tell us a little bit about Kalyna Country.
Well, Paulette, I can tell you, first of all, 1991 is kind of significant because, of course, 91-92 was the 100th anniversary of Ukrainian settlement in Canada. And the Canadian Institute of Ukrainian Studies and the province of Alberta wanted to mark this in some way. And the Institute's suggestion was to, rather than publishing a book, holding simply a conference, or which we also held a conference as well, but to do something that would be lasting, that would be ongoing. And so they came up with the idea of turning the settlement block outside of Edmonton, the Vegreville area, Two Hills, Smoky Lake, into an eco-museum. So I was commissioned to do a 30-year development strategy for the region as an eco-museum, and then a follow-up strategy for organizing a volunteer society to run the thing. So what exactly then is an eco-museum? Well, eco is, the word eco, of course, is the root of economy and ecology, and both of those meanings figure in the understanding of an eco-museum. Basically, eco is the Greek word for a place where people live. So this is a museum of where people live. And the ecology aspect comes in it in the sense that an eco-museum is both an economic development strategy and a conservation strategy. It's primarily a conservation strategy, but it's a very smart one because the logic of it is how do you get people to preserve their history, their heritage, their natural areas, their unique culture, if you can show them, especially in an area where it might be struggling economically. If you can show them that by doing it right and packaging it and promoting it for tourism, you're going to bring people in who are going to leave money in your communities. And so that's where the economic part becomes a carrot that helps encourages people then to say, oh, let's not drain that wetland. Let's build trails around it and put some signage in and develop it as a wetland that people can enjoy. Or let's not tear down that old blacksmith shop. Let's fix it up and turn it into a tourist attraction. So eco-museums, rather than a traditional museum where you take artifacts or artificially create dioramas and displays in a building, or take artifacts from an area and pull them into one place, you leave everything in situ where it is, and you encourage people to go out there to see them in their actual settings. So that's where, again, where the economic development, the tourism comes in, because then people, they have to drive out, so they have to buy gas. They need to get something to eat. They'll pay admission. They might buy a souvenir. They might stay over for the weekend at a bed and breakfast. And so suddenly somebody is coming in to see these old Ukrainian churches in the countryside, to see the local museums, to see the natural areas, to attend a festival or a fair. And all of those figure into the eco-museum concept.
So you said that it was the centennial of Ukrainian settlement that kind of sparked this idea in Alberta.
Yes, well, part of the reason for that is that they understood that everybody would have history on their minds because people, it's a centennial year, so it's an anniversary year, and people think about those first pioneers who came. So it was a good opportunity to basically intervene with the idea, or introduce the idea of, like, look, how do we keep the memory of these things alive, the heritage, this unique heritage of the region alive. And so that was like a calling card that allowed us to begin the conversation on the eco-museum.
Now, the whole concept of eco-museums is fairly new, though. You've broken some ground here with it.
Well, actually, the eco-museum concept isn't all that new. I mean, it was pioneered, some say, in Scandinavia in the 1890s yet. Really, after the Second World War in France is where it took off, where you had these communities that were Rust Belt towns, had these old industries that were technologically obsolete and were suffering from depopulation and were economically moribund. and this is in central France. You had, of course, the Riviera in the south of France that was well developed for tourism, and people would drive through central France on their way to southern France as to the beaches and their holidays. And the strategy came up was sort of, how do we keep them? How do we delay them? How do we get them to stay a day or two along the way? Or how do we make this into a destination, into a tourist destination? So they took some of those old factories and they turned them into museums. So people could see how textiles were made in the 1890s or 1880s, the machinery, the mills, the unusual things, and of course then bed and breakfast spring up around that, and so every area has its own unique qualities and features, and so it started in France, and then it's been applied in various places. You can develop an eco-museum in a city, so you can take the garment district of New York and apply an eco-museum strategy to interpret and preserve and promote the area for tourism.
So in Alberta, then, how big is it, the Kalyna Country?
Kalyna Country is 20,000 square kilometers, which you can more easily visualize by basically saying it's 4 times the size, almost 5 times the size of Prince Edward Island.
Wow.
And I always like to joke that part of my long-term vision for Kalyna Country, of course, is that we're going to declare independence. We'll let the Canadian government invade. We'll negotiate a settlement, and if Prince Edward Island is allowed a couple of Senate seats, we're 5 times the size, so we should be allowed 10 Senate seats. So I'll take 10. We'll sell 5 to the highest bidder, and then 5 I'll give to my friends, and we'll live happily ever after.
Oh, that sounds like a plan. I guess that's down the road, though.
That's down the road.
For now, what are you up to with Kalyna Country? What's going on now?
Well, I said we're now a mature organization. We've grown substantially. Our budget, I said when we started, at one point we were $1,500 in debt, and we're pretty much a $300,000 a year operation now. We publish a visitors and events guide. We're working on the next issue. It comes out every year around this time in early March, and we print 75,000 copies, and they're distributed not only in Edmonton, primarily in Edmonton is our primary market, but through Western Canada and nooks and crannies in the Ukrainian community that I'm able to get it into. I've had them into the Ukrainian community in Alberta and British Columbia on a number of occasions, and we'll try to get some more in this year. But it's become very popular, and we're going to be doing it this year. I mean, it's the David Thompson bicentennial, which is being celebrated actually for 3 years. And David Thompson, of course, one of the fur traders and explorers who opened up the Canadian West and spent time in Kalyna Country, came through Kalyna Country, so we're doing our whole David Thompson thing this year in particular.